Hi friends, it's Eric here, host of Talking with Famous People, and I'm got some really boring stuff that I'm doing right now, as Kimberly informed me. She walked in and saw what I was writing here and said, she's like, you're doing really boring stuff right now. I'm like, okay. Well, boring it may be, but also it's super exciting and not boring at all. So let's go over it real quick. These are philosophy thoughts for the skeptics. That's, I don't care if it's cosmic skeptic or rationality rules.
Boring person.
Or Matt Dilla, Hunty or whatever his name is. Or Sargon of Assat.
You have nothing better going on in your life.
Oh, some people like this stuff, Ken. They like philosophy stuff. Now look, I did a bunch of threes, just for kicks. Truth, validity, impact. There are three ways to measure the correctness of something, and that's either by its inherent truth or its singular resonance with
boringness,
correctness to the to the exclusion of other alternatives. So
boring.
And what I mean by that is sometimes the answer is, well, why would everybody staring at me? Sometimes the answer is because I had a big ass fucking booger right on the tip of my nose, right? And it's definitely that's the answer. It's not anything else, right? So that's what I mean by truth. Is there are circumstances when we can sort of meaning finagle away reality, and there are some when we really can't, and that's what the truth aspect refers to in this instance. It's important to remember the truth is a
bore.
Is a bore. It's a wild pig. Truth is a status before the sentences, statements in particular, and not to comments, and not to commands, and not to questions. And we afford it according to a three-legged test of truth, which I'll maybe cover eventually. Validity, on the other hand, doesn't require any. The symbols even mean anything. It's like math, if A then B, if B then C, blah blah blah. It doesn't. Those things don't even have to mean anything in particular. So validity doesn't require truth to be valid. Impact is just measuring on the effectiveness of something as compared against your desired outcome. The next little trifecta I've got here is observer, agent, object. It's important to remember the observer. So a cosmic skeptic, for example, or his ilk, they are themselves observers. Something they tend to forget. They want to isolate agents and objects in the world and do analysis on them while denying their own third frame of reference to complete the sort of metaphysical 3D. Agents include yourself. It's your self-concept of yourself as an agent, but your actual self is
boring.
More than just agential. As I say, it doesn't just do shit. Sometimes you just sleep or whatever. Sometimes you just be.
Boring.
Kimberly. And the object, well, it can be an agent as well. The agent can be an object of a certain action by another agent, or it could be like, this lighter is an object, Of course, there are different kinds of objects, which is why I put the next thing: object of space, object of time, object of teleology. This lighter is an object of space. But the lighter you see in this video is an object, part of it. The object is an object of time, namely this video. The video is an object of time. The lighter within it is an object of time. And it's a symbolic representation of an actual thing. Well, objects of time are not less real than objects of space. They're just less tangible.
This is so boring.
It's not boring, though. It's super interesting. I'm blowing everyone's minds right now. Okay, let me continue. Object of time refers to something that has identity rather than attributes. Objects in space have attributes. Like this bag here is, however big it is, no bigger than my hand, It's an attribute. but it doesn't really have an identity, except insofar as it links to the fact that it currently is holding some weed. Actually holding the free gram. That's a fat free gram she gave us, actually. That I got from my stamp card, because when you fill it up, you buy 10, you get one free kind of thing. Here you go. Juan Pablo. Oh, thank you, senor. Alright, object of teleology, what that means is your objective in something. Not being objective, like that kind of objective, but your desired outcome. Everything is framed through some sort of teleological frame as well, that is, say, your purpose for doing or saying or whatever. 1, 2, 3, ordinal, conditional, causal. Ordinal refers to things that are like conditional in that they're turn-based, except they're not conditional. So, baking a pie, there's an order of operations you have to go in. If you do it in the wrong order, if you cook it first and then mix the eggs and the flour and stuff, it'll turn it all fucked up, right? It's ordinal. Conditional, on the other hand, is like going around the internet conditionally. You click a link, you decide you don't want it, you push back button, whatever. Causal is making physical change in the world. So, building the coop, if I do something, if I decide, I fucked up, I don't want to do it that way, I gotta undo the thing. Actually, I can't just push undo. Let's see here. Descriptive, normative, and predictive. So, really, if you're gonna divide statements into three, you call them descriptive, normative, and predictive. Normative just refers to, in the least specialized sense of the word, it refers to something that compares against a norm or standard. So, for example, 20/20 vision is normative. That's a vision thing that compares against a standard, not against
Boring.
not against anything more particularist than that. Like, not against your desired amount of sight, for example. That would be non-normative. So, under the category of normative are both prescriptive statements and what are normally referred to as normative statements in philosophy. We say ethical statements or statements of morals. Moral shoulds and oughts versus practical shoulds and oughts. Predictive is the other kind of statement because while prescriptive and normative are classified under normative, predictive is a different kind of statement. It's saying, if you say this will happen, you're making a prediction. Anything that's in the future, you're making a prediction. Unless it's part of a conditional statement, in which case you're still making a prediction. Alright. Unless you're doing something that's mechanical with it. So let's go down here. Existence, instantiation, and equivalence. I think these are three ways of understanding identity or something. Yeah, identity, I guess. Entityhood. Existence being being, and it implies an ongoing state of thereidness. Whereas instantiation, an instance of something, does not necessarily suggest ongoing existence. So, I might push you on some occasion. It would be weird to say it exists that I pushed you, or that I pushed you exists, because it's a fact maybe, but it doesn't exist like this lighter exists. This lighter is a thing, an object in space that exists. Instead, it's true to say that pushing me instantiated. There was an instance of it. And therefore it achieved existence, at least temporarily, but it's not the sort of thing that retains existence like a physical object does. Nor is it has been rendered into a time-object equivalency. I have a memory of it that is labeled with certain words. Joe pushed me. Maybe for some duration afterwards, if you pushed hard enough, maybe I have a bruise or something. But the pushing itself doesn't continue to exist. Alright, equivalence is another quality that something has where we can say, for example, the most equivalent things are fungible, That is, I can trade you one U.S. quarter for another U.S. quarter. Nobody's going to give a damn which quarter you got unless it's a super special one. That's very fungible. Whereas, which puppy am I going to get is much less fungible. I can't just get any old puppy and they'll all turn out the same. Okay. Meta framework, and contention level. Arguments, statements, affirmations, whatever. Whenever we're talking in a sort of intellectual fashion like this about philosophy stuff or making arguments or making claims or that kind of shit, we need to be thinking in terms of framework, and contention. Meta framework is basically, what are you really trying to do here? You're trying to show you're smart, you're trying to impress people, you're trying to teach something, and not what you say you're trying to do, what you're really trying to do. And in that instance, you might, you know what you prioritize ultimately, and to some extent you know. More importantly, meta framework would say, like, a meta framework thing would be, okay, can we, you know what, let's pause this heated argument about deontology right now because the building's on fire. That would be making a meta framework argument. Framework is how we define the ground. What are we arguing about? What do our terms mean? And how are we going to determine who wins or that thing reaches resolution? And lastly, contention level argumentation is, assuming we're agreeing on the framework and the definitions of stuff, let's hash out the particulars. 1, 2, 3, dialectic, rhetoric, and dramatic. 3 kinds of communication. One is designed to determine the truth. 2 is designed to accomplish your affirmation or negation, to attain your advocacy, so to speak. Number 3 is designed to either blame or laud yourself or somebody else. So 3 is like pathos. But 1 and 2 are not like logos and ethos. They're different things. I don't know. Grammatic's like people-centered stuff. 1, 2, 3. Justice, rehabilitation, and collectivism. Justice would say, let's treat everybody fairly and adhere to basic negative prescriptions against certain kinds of bad behavior. Rehabilitation would say, let's not exact justice to the full extent that we can or ought to its literal realization, because mercy is preferable to pure justice. Collectivism would say, let's be evil by, let's ignore justice and mercy and pursue ideology instead. That's what collectivism is. 1, 2, 3, logical, analogical, empirical. Logical says, logical is contention level thinking. Analogical is empirical is contention level thinking. Logical is framework level thinking, and analogical is meta framework level thinking, basically. But what I mean by that is, logical stuff will parse out the definitions and see the equivalencies and contradictions. Analogical will parse out the contentions and think of equivalencies that are more or less related. So from totally unrelated to closely related. And to find equivalencies where the mechanics of the relationship are the same, but the specifics are different. And say, well, we don't do meow, meow, meow when we meow, meow, so why should we meow when we meow? That's analogical. Empirical is like, we can stop talking about it. It works, that's good enough, let's just do it. Or, well, I know it violates all your precious little principles and axioms, but it saved 1,000 lives in the last 15 minutes. Illogical is just like, the law says this, and this is what it must clearly mean, and if it meant the other thing, it would mean there's a contradiction over here, and we can't have that, so I'm pressing. Relational, objective, and purposeful. So I was thinking that a person's calculus can either be relational, that is to say, how is this impacting how does this impact the people? Objective, how does this play out on the logical calculus? Or 3, purposeful, how does it play out on an impacts calculus? 1, 2, 3. Positive space, you might say, is purposeful. Negative space, positive space you might think of as being logical. Positive space you might think of as being empirical. Negative space you might think of as being logical. And borders you might think of as being analogical. Illocutionary, locutionary, and pre-fiat. So illocutionary refers to your own intended meaning that is either unconscious or unspoken, either one, or both, Locutionary refers to the expressed meaning of the words. Tone usually is carried in the illocutionary frame. Even if it's intended, but it's not said, it's an expression of your desire in some regard, or will, rather than meaning. So it's illocutionary. Pre-fiat would say, basically, that regardless of both your illocutionary and locutionary frames of intention, you'll have impacts that are unintended, necessarily, for everything. Because you only process impacts as far as your frame extends. I'm worrying about how this fight we're playing out between me and Kim, and secondarily, I'm worrying about, the neighbors can hear it, right? So, 1, 2, 3, altruism, reciprocity, and sin. Altruism being an attempt to do good, reciprocity being an attempt not to do bad, and sin being rejection of 1 and 2. 1, 2, 3, evolutionary, theistic, meta-rational. An evolutionary frame of reference is just a theism that inculcates agency via a massive reification fallacy to something called a species that has things that are in its interest and not in its interest, distinct from any individual experience of it. This is why it's nonsense, among millions of other reasons. The evolutionary frame is a terrible frame of reference. Theistic's better, but not much. Theistic frame of reference is... it's a lot better. Sorry. I have to say it's a lot better. It's a lot better because it puts to bed the question of purpose without having to use make-believe nonsense like evolutionary frames of reference that the reason this is because it's useful to humans because of or some other bullshit little story like that. No, I don't like it. Theism at least says, okay, well, I'm going to put together the teleology question and put to bed the teleology question for existence. I exist because, insert God or slabs or whatever. And, it's interested. God, he, it, they, with slabs, they're interested parties. They're not disinterested. He's not disinterested. Meta-rational. Meta-rational says these things aren't arguments anyway. Faith is behavior. And I don't need to affirm statements in order to gain benefits from behavior on both utilitarian calculus and on an ontological calculus. That is to say, I don't need to only improve my experience, I can improve my being. Is there more? I didn't put down my three-legged thing of truth. Okay, here's my three-legged thing about truth. So there are various theories of truth. Number one theory of truth is the bearer-carrier theory of truth. That language is true because and when it carries a message that is consistent with the holder of truth, that it's a physical reality. This is sort of the empiricist's theory of truth. Well, we know this weighs 5 pounds because we weighed it, and it weighs 5 pounds. You said it weighed 6 pounds, but you were saying something that was false because we just weighed it and it weighs 5 pounds. That's the truth bearer, truth carrier. That's what it's called, bearer carrier. Truth bearer, truth carrier model of truth, or theory of truth. Second theory of truth is the correspondence theory, which says not a whole hell of a lot besides just that if people agree on the meaning of words and people use them as they're normally used by general agreement, then we can tell the truth because it's the way they're using it is either sensible or not sensible or something. I mean, it's kind of weak. Obviously, it does matter if we're using words in a normal way. That's one way you can be false, in other words. Like, if I say, I want to go Mambo Dog Patch to the banana face, and I mean I need to go to the bathroom, well, I haven't said something false when I say that. I said something nonsensical. But if I say I have to go to the bathroom and really I'm going to go out and smoke a joint, well, then I've said something false. And I've said something more specifically that's untrue and deceptive. I've deceived. So the third leg of truth, as far as I understand it, is intentionality. That if one knowingly and intentionally speaks untruly, even if one can literally defend it, one is still deceiving if that's one's intention. Like, I was thinking of an example earlier today, because I was, how would I say that to Kim where I wouldn't be lying? Something like, I pulled the car out. I was parked on the street. Well, I also went somewhere in between. It wasn't, this wasn't the one that happened today. That thought happened some time ago, like maybe a week ago or something, where I was like, I want to go there. I don't want her to know I went there. What should I do about that? And when she gets back, I'll just tell her, oh no, I know what it was. I wanted her to take one of the cars and leave the other car. So I pulled it out. I pulled both of them out on the street. But then I went somewhere. I don't remember exactly what the fuck happened. But the point is, I said, why is the car on the street? I pulled it out because I was tired. That's what it was. I pulled it out because I was tired of squeezing between the car and the cactus. Which is true, I was tired of that. And that was sort of one of my reasons for pulling the car out. But the real reason to pull the car out was not that. It was to go someplace, and then I don't even remember what the real reason was. Something that I didn't want to get to have to deal with talking about. So, yeah. That would be an example of how intentionality can play a role in the truth of something. Truth is not a clearly determinable status. It's a status that we agree upon for the sake of argumentation, or for the sake of doing whatever communicative work we're doing. Sometimes we're arguing in order to debate one another, in order to defeat one another. Sometimes we're actually trying to figure something out. Sometimes we're just sort of testing ideas to see what holds more water or something. Sometimes just chatting. But yeah, it's got to pass all three standards of truth, and only two of them we can determine objectively. So we can't know for sure what your intention is. So we can't. Only you yourself can do that with your own words, but other people can't do that with your words exactly. They can't tell what your intention is. not determinatively anyway. So I guess that's about it for this video, and I wanted to put like ethical. I want to say a couple things about theology and God and stuff, deism. Everybody has to deal with the question of purpose, because you have a certain amount of will, a certain amount of time, and probably, if you're like most people, a lot more liberty or freedom than you take advantage of. So, what I mean is, we have to make choices and use some of our energy to do certain things and not others. Embrace certain potentials and dash others in the process. So, the question of what ought we do is implicit to mortality. Because you don't have infinite time and you are going to die, your choices matter. There's no rewinding the life and replaying that scene to get it better. All your choices matter. And when you're not making any choices, when you're just deliberating and not acting, then you are choosing to wait until you have a better sense of where to direct your precious finite energies that are precious and finite, because you're going to die. Ought is implicit in everything we do. Absolutely everything we say and do. It has an illocutionary frame. Links back to the observer. It doesn't mean that every single statement is equally objective. I'm not a relativist. Of course not. Things are contextual, though. So, if I tell you, if I say, when pigs fly, you might say, well, that's not being rational. Pigs will never fly. But that's why I use the expression. And I wasn't being irrational. If I was saying, when pigs fly, will I agree that you're being irrational. It's a call to perfection fallacy, Eric, because pigs will never fly. Don't you know that? Well, yeah, I do know that. It's just a figure of speech. Meaning, that ain't never gonna happen. So, I guess where I'm going with this little doodad here is, understand that being objective is implicit to communication amongst others by yourself. So you communicating with others. But it's not the only way to interact with others. Lots of human interactions are non-communicative. That is to say, they may create, you may find them meaningful, but they aren't made out of meanings. Whereas lots of other experiences are non-experiential. They're just communicative. Or the experiences that you experience are secondhand FE emotions. And the majority of the experience is not experience at all. It's just meaning processing. So, you want to go outside, or do you want to process this data about what it's like to go outside? Let's process the data, obviously. Can we just stick our heads outside real quick and we get a little bit more data and then come back in and process some more? Yeah, okay, fine. Spend 8 hours a day processing data about the outside, 4 hours a day being outside, and 12 hours a day sleeping. So, That's that. I mean, just like being an atheist is dumb. I'm not trying to convert you or anything. I don't give a fuck about, like, I don't have a religion to convert you to, even. But, except Yalorianism, of course, you should convert to that. I'm just saying, it's dumb. Because the way you're trying to solve the same question of existential teleology is so clunky and cumbersome and nonsensical and hard to ideate from and useless compared to God. So why would we prefer it as an alternative? Thanks for watching. Don't forget to eat plenty of cheese. That's a very, very terrible rendition of that song there. It's not a song.